You know what? We take things for granted. That's just the way we are. We're spoiled. We complain sometimes if the water doesn't get hot enough in the hotel quick enough. Well, how about if you had no fresh water to drink, to cook with, to bathe in, or anything else? Well, today we're going to meet a gentleman who heads up an organization that's making sure that those places in the world where that is the case, that those things are going to change for the better. Welcome to This Alabama Life. Hello and welcome to This Alabama Life. My name is Don Keith. I am your host. My co-host is Andrea Tice. Great to see you, Andrea.
Good to be seen.
I'm glad you stumbled upon our little humble podcast here. Our mission in life with this podcast is to highlight people who are doing good, positive, and we hope also entertaining things, to tell you more about them and what they're doing. So much bad news in the news these days that a lot of us have turned the news off. Well, hopefully this is a podcast that you can turn on, and also turn on the podcast for other folks. Word of mouth helps, but if you'll go to our YouTube page, the Facebook page for This Alabama Life, wherever, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star review if you think we deserve it, and subscribe. That's the most important thing, because then you'll hear about who our guest is each week, and you'll have the opportunity to meet them just as we're meeting them. And this is our guest today is someone I've never met before, but I'm looking forward to hearing about some wonderful stuff that he's involved in. You know, so many of us take the basics in life for granted. We get upset because we can only get 3 bars on our cell phone. What about being in parts of the world where you can't even get a drink of water that won't make you sick? Well, that's one of the things that this gentleman's involved in.
Yeah, we're so glad to have Matt Letorneau, the CEO of Never Thirst, on board with us today to tell us all about what Never Thirst is doing. So let's start out with just the fact that Never Thirst was started a few years back here in Birmingham.
That's correct.
And you want to tell us about that whole story and then how you came on board.
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me. And it's true. Never Thirst is Alabama born and bred. Origin story for us is that our 3 founders were all members at a church here called the Church of Brook Hills. And at the time, there was a visiting pastor by the name of David Platt. And David was preaching a sermon one Sunday on Psalm 67, 1 and 2. And the crux of the sermon was basically, have you disconnected God's blessing with God's purposes for your life? It really wrecked these 3 guys that were in attendance that Sunday, and they started getting together and committed an entire year and a half of their life to traveling the globe and really asking the Lord, hey, what would you have us to do with our lives? You've blessed us a lot. How can we be a blessing to others and be a conduit of blessing instead of just a reservoir? Yeah. And so it led them to ultimately be in Sudan before the Civil War, before there was Sudan and South Sudan. And they were standing outside of what they would call a hospital, but really it's just a building where kids die for lack of clean water. Met a lady outside the building whose child was there and asked, where do you get your water? And so they walked about a mile and a half away from that spot through a bunch of bush and came to an algae-covered pond and said, this is it. This is where we get our water. I come 4 times a day. And at that moment, they said, this is clearly what God has called us to do, is to shine a light on this issue and to platform the church. And so Never Thirst was birthed to bring clean and living water to unreached places in the world, both places that are considered unreached with clean water and with the gospel.
Yeah, well, backing up just a little bit, you know, a lot of people may hear that call, but you heard that call. What was your background that made you respond to the call to help people get clean water?
Right. Well, I had a long and winding road to Never Thirst. My life personally was transformed through a college ministry when I was a student at Auburn University. Ended up going on staff at that ministry for a number of years out of college, and then subsequently left and went into business, went into management consulting for a number of years. And really Never Thirst the board was looking for a new direction for the organization. Their former director was a good guy, but there was just incremental growth. They were looking for a little bit more of a big vision and explosive growth, and so they were looking for someone to lead us into the next phase. And so they engaged with an executive search firm here in town called Fire Seeds, which is a Birmingham-based business, and they conducted the search, and everything in my life was, I guess Platt would say, had written God a blank check, and their search led them to me, and God was working in my life and led me to Never Thirst. And so we made the move from Atlanta to Birmingham in 2019.
All right. Well, so Never Thirst gets into place, and you're brought on board. Now let's make our audience aware of exactly what you're doing in the physical sense of bringing water to these people, and let's also explore this whole idea of what this does for a person's life when they have clean water. Just a cup of clean water is actually it's mind-blowingly life-changing in a lot of ways for these people.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole, so we can go as deep and as long as you want to go.
I know you have a lot of stories, individual stories that you could probably share. But just take us through the day of someone like that person outside of the hospital, and what that means when they have to go to a algae-covered pond and get that water.
Yeah, so on a meta level, right, there are 771 million people in the world that would not have access to any sort of safe, potable drinking water.
That's 750 million people.
That's exactly right.
Wow. Who would have thought? I mean, I turn on my faucet, water comes out.
Yeah, I mean, Don, for example, I was sitting in India, northeast India, on the border of Bhutan in the state of Assam in northeast India a couple of years ago, and a 60-year-old man sat across from me and said, "In America, how far do you have to walk to find water? Just water, not even clean water, safe water, just to get water." And I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, what room am I in? You know what I mean? Like, it's like 12 feet.
Yeah.
If I want it warm, I turn the one on the left, and just no concept of that. This man was 60 years old his entire life. He'd suffered from diarrhea because he just had to walk and get unsafe, dirty water. So back into context, 771 million people around the world that don't have access to potable water. The water crisis hits women the hardest. So if you're born a woman in these contexts, and where we work is in mostly sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. If you're born a woman, by the time you're 5 years old, your lot in life is to wake up every morning and just find water. And so that's your life. And that domino knocks down a lot of other dominoes for you.
Right. Meaning
that if you're a woman, because your job is to find water for the family, you can't go to school. You cannot get an education. You cannot advance in society. The cycle of poverty goes on and on and on. And, bad actors in the world know the well-worn paths of these girls and young women that are getting water every day, and that's where a lot of human trafficking happens. And so you're putting them in harm's way in terms of traffickers. Obviously, the water that they're getting causes disease, in a lot of cases death. So 800 kids today will die just because they drank water that was diseased. Right. And so you have crisis on multiple levels just because there's no clean water. So if you can provide clean water in a community, then it gives girls opportunity to get an education and rise in society, gives them an opportunity, obviously mitigates the opportunity to be trafficked, and it most obviously mitigates the possibility of getting sick and death.
Right. So these people are living on basically a subsistence almost. It's just barely existing.
Oh, yeah.
Barely existing, and in a poor way, a terrible way, and yet just a clean glass of water and the time that is saved and the rooting that is saved, that is rediverted is saving their lives.
Yeah, 40 billion hours will be dedicated this year just walking to get water. I literally, 3 days ago, landed back in the States. I was in Chad, Africa. And Chad is 187 out of 189 on the World Poverty Index, right? And then half of our team went to Niger, where we're working, which is 189 out of 189. So it's like the poorest places on the planet. And we were standing in a village and said, hey, can you just take us where you normally get water? And so we walked, a quarter of a mile, and there was just, it looked like the ground. It was just cracked ground. And the drought had dried it up, and there was no water. So we're like, through translation, we're like, where do you go? There is no water anywhere near this village. Where do you go? So we got in our truck, and drove 3 hours to a river. And these ladies say that they just get on a donkey and do that every day.
What?
And so 3 hours in a car driving to a river, that's, obviously a disgusting river. But that's their life. That's their life, is they just get on donkeys and they go and they get water and they bring it back, and it makes them sick.
Yeah. So all that work, and it's still not helping them. And
Right,
it
yeah.
barely keeps them alive and
yes.
makes their life even worse.
Yes.
With all the
And maybe kills them.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and they need water for their animals, and they need water just to live. But it's subsistence farming, and a lot of these people are nomadic because they're on the move trying to find water.
I know there's a whole nother rabbit hole of talking about geopolitics and everything. And I know we talked about this before, because the immediate question always comes, I'm just going to say it because it comes to everybody's mind. Why is it that their own government doesn't care about them, doesn't do anything to help this?
Yeah, I mean, we could, knowing where I'm sitting and knowing who I'm talking to here, we can talk for days and years about our own government and the issues in our own government. But corruption and layers of corruption is everywhere. And in these countries, I'll just use Chad in particular. It's the president of Chad is from a tribe. It's all tribal. And if you happen to be in that tribe, then you get the benefits of being associated with the president's passed down in that tribe. But if you're in any other tribe in Chad, you are marginalized and kept out of benefit. And, there's just such a deep corruption in these governments. It's unbelievable. So let's just take the South Sudan. Let's take the country of South Sudan. South Sudan is the size of Texas. Okay. It's a big place. South Sudan has 50 miles of paved road. Size of Texas, 50 miles of it's paved road. And if you go to these countries, it's like there is no road. You're making your own road. It's just, so and you can see where the government stopped working, and then they say, well, we ran out of funds, right? But if you look at where their ruling officials are and live, you know exactly where all the money is. And they're just, the layers of corruption, the layers of poverty, it's very, very complex.
That's the thing. A lot of these countries have natural resources that are valuable.
Yeah.
A lot of them get aid from people like us, our taxpayer dollars.
Certainly, yes.
But obviously it's not getting to the people that need it the most.
That would be correct. Yeah, in Francophone Africa, a lot of it's, French colonization and getting help from France. But it's you could see where it stops, where it begins and where it ends.
Well, do you run into danger helping people that maybe are in the wrong tribe?
That's a great question. We trust God, and we we know that all of our days are numbered, and that He's written all of our days down in His book, and we're not going to live one day longer than we were meant to, or one day shorter. And there's been moments, like 2 times ago in Chad, we were sitting in a village and 2 guys walked up on us with machetes, but dropped the machetes and just came and sat with us. And so I don't think they were meaning anything. And a lot of the times we feel safe because these people are so desperate. When we're there, they know that we're there to help them, and they're not trying to harm us. And to be quite frank, we've sat with a lot of government officials, local government officials who know that we're Christians, and they're Muslims because we're working in a Muslim context. And they've said to us, we know that you're Christians, but no one else is helping us. Our government has abandoned us. The Muslims are not helping us. And so you can do whatever you want. And you can say whatever you want because you're the only ones helping us. And so that's really the crux of Never Thirst, is we're trying to meet the physical need for the ultimate purpose of meeting their most desperate spiritual need. because we want them to have hope in this life and the next.
How many people are involved in Never Thirst? How many people are climbing on airplanes and going to Africa or Asia?
Great question. So we're a small operation. We only have 14 full-time
14
people working for us. And our model is that, like, I'm not over there drilling a well. No one on our team is physically over there with a rig implementing an engineered water solution. What we do is these people need jobs and job training. And so we're not trying to take any jobs away from locals. So there's plenty of NGO water drilling companies. So in my background in business, we're trying to help these companies scale and grow and add jobs to their local economy. So what we'll do is we'll raise money and find a reputable drilling organization that's run by Chadians or, Cambodians or Indians, or Nepalese. And we'll give them basically maybe $100,000 to $150,000 tryout money to make sure after we've done a thorough vetting process. And then if we'll manage the project. And then if everything goes to plan and they're faithful in little, then we will engage with a plan with them to scale their company and do a much larger investment so that they can employ more people and get more help through clean water to the places that currently don't have clean water in their countries.
And when you contract with these native companies to do the well drilling, there's another end of this that you also engage in, and that is not just dropping in a well and saying, hey guys, free water.
Yeah.
You're involved with community building on the other end of that. So tell us about that.
That's a great question as well. And I can tell you've done your homework. So the welfare mentality is everywhere. Okay. Yeah. The welfare mentality is worldwide.
Yes.
And so we absolutely don't believe in just going in there and just handing out free things, even if it's a natural resource that they need with water. So everything has a culture, everything has a hierarchy. And so what we do is we work with an evangelist or a local church, mostly it's all the underground church, and this drilling company that we are partners with. We work through partners. And we will go they have all mapped out every single village in an entire region. We're focused on 14 regions around the world, and we know every single village in these regions that need water. And so we just systematically go into all these places and we say, okay, where's the chief, and where are the decision makers here? And we say, do you want clean water? Yes, we do. Okay, well, how much is that worth to you? Are you willing to raise a repair fund from everyone in this village that says we want it so bad that we'll each contribute $1 or $2 to this,
which is a lot for them.
Which is when you're living on less than $1 a day, it's a massive,
right.
It's a significant amount of money. So they're raising $250 to sometimes $500, $800 repair fund depending on what water solution we're doing, and that money goes in escrow and it's overseen by a water committee of 3 women in the village so that the chief can't take it and use it for himself.
Wise move, getting the women involved.
That's exactly right. So these 5 women are overseeing that repair, and then they have to learn how to care for that solution so that it's sustainable, so that if it breaks, it's not Never Thirst water solution.
Yeah.
This is theirs. They have to own it.
Yeah.
So they have to learn how to fix it. They have to know who to call if they can't fix it so that the water keeps flowing. Because it's not like we just showed up one day, popped a hole in the ground, and left and didn't teach them, because the training goes on and on. It's not just clean water. It's like we're having to teach on hygiene and sanitation. We're building latrines. We're building hand washing stations because we have to teach people that you can't go to the bathroom where you drink.
Right.
And it's just, that seems very sensical to us. But when you've done something for millennia, those kind of behavioral patterns are hard to break.
I think I see the method in the madness here is once they've experienced having clean water and their children not dying from dirty water, it's hard to go back to that, and they'll do the right thing.
Exactly right. That's right. Because they're healthy, their kids are able to go to school, they know.
And at the same time, you're talking about Jesus.
That's exactly right. Yeah, the living water, 100%.
And it's an incredible inroad because you're matching your words with already done actions that have provided life-saving measures to them. And so you'd be a fool not to listen to what else you have to say about the life-giving water of Jesus.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, I think it's somewhere in the last decade, it became trendy, I think, for nonprofits and Christian organizations to talk about like giving dignity or adding dignity to people. And I don't really like talking about that, because the way that I see it is that these people are already dignified because they've been made in the image of God. And basically what we're doing is we're going and we're giving them an opportunity to walk in the dignity and to live in the dignity that they've already been given by being created in the image of God, by owning and contributing to something that is going to change their lives and cause for flourishing, instead of continuing to walk in this cycle of death and destruction. So the living water, we were working through our pastors are going and saying, listen, you've been created in the image of God, and Jesus cares for you. Like, he genuinely cares for you. And the reason we're here is because you've been made in the image of God. And we want you to know this Jesus, who cares for you more than your government cares for you, and more than your God cares for you. You know what I mean? Your false God cares for you. And so
the one who never showed up to do anything.
and they are so, and they're open. And I have amazing stories of the power of God, that have shown up in those situations.
That's kind of where I was going to go next. First of all, how long have you been doing this? And how long has the group been together?
Yep.
And tell us some positive stories. I'm sure you've got plenty of them, but tell us first about the water and then the water of life. Some things that have really worked out the right way.
Right. Well, so Never Thirst was founded in 2008 by our three founders. I am not one. Forrest Walden. And so if there's anybody here that loves Alabama, loves fitness, Iron Tribe Fitness, that's Forrest Walden. Spencer Sutton and a guy named Mark Whitehead were the three founders of Never Thirst. So I had nothing to do with that. I didn't even know Never Thirst existed in 2008. Fire Seeds found me, and the board found me in 2019, and that's when I came on board. So I just literally, it will be, I believe April 1st will be my 3-year anniversary with Never Thirst.
April Fools.
Yeah, that's right. We'll just call it April 2nd.
There you go.
Yeah. It's my 3-year anniversary with Never Thirst. So had the opportunity to travel most places where we're working. COVID put a little slow down on that, so I still have not traveled to Nepal.
None of these sound like Club Med, by the way.
Yeah. It's sleeping on the ground under a mosquito net. It was 112 in Chad last week.
Oh my!
And
goodness.
so that was battling dehydration and there's not a lot of food, so we're just eating granola bars that we'd packed. And so it's pretty Spartan, it's gritty, but I think that this is what God's called us to do. And so it's a joy for us to go and to be with these people. And it's also super humbling and sobering, to understand that it's like, this is their reality. This is my week or two, but this is their every day.
Right.
But in terms of answering your question about some cool stories, I mean, off the top of my head, just plucking one or two out of the air. In terms of just the personal power of God, where I was floored, was I was in India back in the fall of 2019, summer of 2019, right after I'd taken the role. And I won't tell you exactly where I was for security reasons, but there's a pastor there who I had the privilege of meeting in the village that he was ministering in. And I asked him through translation, what did it take to get clean water to this place? So through translation, he just proceeded to tell me that he had had a burden for this entire region and had been visiting the villages in this particular village. He had visited multiple times and just tried to share the gospel of Jesus with them. And they said, we're not interested, stop coming here. Undeterred by that, he continued to show up because he just had a burden for these people to hear the gospel of Jesus. And they proceeded to kill his 2 sons, 7 and 5 years old. They poisoned them. They said, we told you never to come back here, but yet you came back. And so this is the price.
Wow.
he continued, like, after that, he met our facilitator at Never Thirst in India on the ground and told him the story. And our guy said, listen, brother, obviously, you don't have to go back there, but if we could get you access to clean water, would you have a heart to go back to these very people? And he said, yes. And so he went back and they said, we told you not to come back and now we're coming after you. And he said, if I can get you, will you listen to what I have to say? He said, yes, we're so desperate. If you can get clean water here, we will listen. And sure enough, they went through the whole process, the community development process, of raising the repair fund, checking all the boxes. We had a successful drill. Water started flowing. And I have a picture. I'll show it to you. You could, if you have show notes, you can clip it on your show notes of the house church that started there because of this man's persistence and his testimony. And I share that. I share that like it's just a story. But the reality is when I step back and I see this man, I know this man. When I step back and I think to myself, I'm like, I wouldn't let my kids get slapped on the wrist.
Right.
For that. You know what I mean? For the and in my Western comfort or whatever you want to call it. And these guys are literally they're paying ultimate prices in a way that was completely foreign to me until I stepped into this.
Have you been surprised how many times you've been told, don't come back, we don't need the water, or the water's not worth having to put up with the other stuff? Or has it happened?
No.
Not to you?
Not to me. The stories that are amazing to me are just the incredible cultural differences. Like, for instance, we were doing toilets in South Sudan and, outhouses, basically, kind of stuff, and 6 months later, this is a mistake, right? So this is like a failure story that I'm sharing, right? You're not supposed to talk about failure. We'll talk about our failures. Not everything is up and to the right all the time. And so we go back 6 months later and it's like, there's like animals in there, potted plant, they're growing gardens in there. And we're like, this is not how we did it. This is not how we trained you to use it.
How we do it in Birmingham.
Yeah, that's right. And found out that we had missed a step in listening to the community as far as what kind of sanitation solution would be right in that context. And so this is, forgive me for sensitive ears or anything offending Western sensibilities perhaps in this, but what we failed to realize is culturally for millennia, the women in these villages every morning walk out to the same place and sit in a circle and do their business. And that's where the village gossip happened.
Oh.
And so you
talk about dual tasking, right?
It was a multitasking, but they would go and they would sit in a circle and that's where they would converse and gossip and chat before they had to go get water. And when you separated them in like an outhouse structure, it's like they had no use for that. So what we learned is we had to do a ring latrine. Like an open air ring latrine. So there was runoff so that they can continue to
communicate.
That. In their culture, that's what made sense to them. And we were like, just how we think of through a Western lens.
I started to ask this question way back 20 minutes ago, but this has to be a learning experience for you guys when you go in there. You've got to listen and you've got to be sensitive to their needs, not necessarily what you think they need to do.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I mean, well, here's the thing. Right is right. Right? I mean, there's right and wrong.
Right.
But there's a whole lot of nuance in terms of what do we need to know? Well, we need to know that you're not going to have waste runoff near a water source. We that these pathogens that are found in water are always bad all the time. You know what I mean? At certain levels.
Yeah.
And so, but, is the style of latrine that we're going to build going to be,
Yeah.
does it have to be
Is that
Western?
a deal
No,
breaker?
it doesn't.
No.
Yeah. And we do multiple different types of water solutions just depending on like where you are in the world and like what that gives you.
Yeah.
So there's not one size fits all. There's a ton of learning. And
I imagine that goes not just country to country, but tribe to tribe.
sometimes, a lot of times it is country to country, just depending on if it's a certain region in the country, which we have a lot of regional focus. There are a lot of similarities country to country for sure. But sometimes tribe to tribe, there's definitely nuance.
I know you don't want to talk about failures, but have there been places where you could not find clean water?
Yes. So in all of our contracts, or our MOUs, we contract for multiple attempts. When you're drilling in sub-Saharan Africa,
Mm-hmm.
How far
Yeah.
down do you have to go just to access a water table? What?
listen, so where we just were in Chad, I was just at a drill, they were going down 250 feet into the ground. Sometimes we got to go down 3 feet into the ground. And that is not like a simple hand pump because like the pump will break. It'll wear someone out. That's like
Yeah, yes.
full body workout just to get a couple pumps. So what we have to do is put a solar pump to the bottom of that, build a rain tank bigger than this room, or not a rain tank, but a storage tank, elevate it many tens of feet above the ground, have that solar pump suck the water into that storage tank, and then gravity feed it down over 1.5 miles or 2 miles of villages,
Yeah.
so that a little girl could come and just turn a faucet during daylight hours and water's flowing. And that's incredibly, involved and a pretty interesting feat of engineering.
Sure,
to be able
and
to do that.
that's why I guess you have local companies when you can that do this.
100%. Yeah.
You don't just go out and hook up to the power main and buy a pump at Home Depot, and
Right.
That's exactly right.
doesn't work that way.
No, and they don't have municipalities that have, they don't have Birmingham Waterworks. You know what I mean? They don't have anything like that. So you have to find the aquifer, tap it, and
Wow.
test
Wow.
it to make sure it's safe. And
it's all self-sufficient out there because like you said, you're out far from any other municipality or access to anything.
Or utility of any
Yes.
kind.
Yeah.
yeah, well, we're talking about like the places where we work, there's no roads. So you're like having to cut a road to get your equipment back there. It's gritty.
All right, you guys climb on airplanes and go all over the world, and where does the money come from?
Money comes from, remarkably, just the incredible generosity of individuals, businesses, and churches. We have donors in all 50 states, about 27 different countries. But obviously, Birmingham has been home base for us. And, one of our strategic goals is just to be the most recognizable nonprofit doing good in the world in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at it in football terms, you know what I mean? When you're recruiting, you want to win in your own backyard. And so we want to be ubiquitous with Birmingham. We want people in Birmingham to be proud that Never Thirst and our organization doing the work we're doing is hometown and right here in the backyard.
Well, what I love about what Never Thirst is doing here in Birmingham is when someone's giving their hard-earned money, they want to know that it has an immediate effect and a long-term effect. It actually changes lives and ultimately allows for opportunity for the gospel. If the person giving that money, that's their ultimate goal. What I love about what you guys are doing is that the ROI, the return on investment, is immediate and it's massive because you're going in and you are literally just completely shifting.
You're starting at zero.
Zero and just shifting everything for these people's lives from age 0 to age 90. And you can just see an immediate change. And then on top of that, the avenue that it's creating for the spiritual element to be brought in is fantastic because you've chosen to partner with the evangelical elements in that country.
Yes.
So I love that. I love to promote that to people that are listening that might be like, okay, where do I want to put $1,000? It's going to go far with you guys.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. About $40 gives one person clean water. And so I was thinking, I was like, what do I blow $40?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, $40 will give
Half a
change.
tank of
Half a
gas.
tank.
yeah. This is right. Yeah.
Oh, we could go on, Don. We could go on about that.
Let's keep it positive, okay?
Okay.
How about
Change someone's life. $40
there
will
you go.
change someone's trajectory of their whole life.
So Never Thirst has been started in 2008, so that's over 10 years. Any success stories of someone who, maybe got that first pump of water when they were 5 years old and were able to go to school, and you've seen the results of that now 10 years later?
Yeah. We've served almost 1 million people with clean living water, at least clean water, and then they've heard the access to the gospel, and a lot of these contexts, house churches have been planted.
And no way to know how many lives that's saved.
So we literally this year, one of our initiatives, we just hired a guy who's our head of WASH programming, but his job is really to measure our sustainability, both on the water side and also to measure ministry impact over time. Like, really, how far has this grown? Mm-hmm. So we're at the beginning to measure, like, how deep and wide has this grown from here? In Chad, right? I was just in a village, and there was, 100 people there when I went 2 years ago, January 2020. Went back after we put a water solution in, and it's tripled.
Wow.
Right? You know what I mean? People hear about it, and they're coming. Church grows. It's amazing. Specifically, I'll tell you a story. Once again, back in South Sudan, one of my colleagues, Jimbo Tucker, here, who works on, he's our director of partnerships, working with local businesses to help them have more added significance in their companies than just being profitable. He went to South Sudan. I mean, I would imagine it has to be at this point, probably back in 2013, 2014. And he met these two kids, Henry and Bethany, and statistically, their sad image of tattered clothes holding a jerry can of water at a dirty water source has been the most clicked image that we've ever had in terms of, like, when we were looking at social media metrics and stuff like that.
Okay.
People, the look on their face, the exposure of need, whatever it is, it just grabs people because, for whatever reason, it's a powerful image.
Right.
Jimbo met them on a trip to South Sudan, their mom. He went back 2 years later to visit the project and met with the mom, said, well, where's Henry and Bethany? He goes, oh, well, they're in school, because we have clean water now. And so now, like, their whole future is they're not here, and they're not going to be here for a long time because it's middle of school day. So, they have hope and a future and these kind of things. So that's not an anecdotal story. That's a real story, but that's the only one that comes to mind right now in terms of just, real life on the ground impact. I mean, we have hard drives full of impact stories. So, and that's what we share. So when people sponsor projects, we want to excel in gratitude. We want to prove that we took your money and did exactly what we said we were going to do with it. And so at a certain price point for projects, people get, like, the full Monty, so to speak, donor experience, where they're at the end, when that project's completed, the water is tested safe, they get pictures before and after, interview with a woman in the community that says, this is what my life was like because of your incredible generosity. This is how it has changed my life. People just like me in the village. And then in testimony from the pastor, that's talking about the spiritual traction that's been gained because of that generous gift.
That's got to be gratifying personally for you guys who are intimately involved in this, as well as the people who donate and help, to see the change that you can do. Most of us never even thought of this, never even thought of this as being a way to get in the door, so to speak, and really make a difference in people's lives, and then do some other things that make a big difference in their lives too.
Yes, 100%. And just by contributing and allowing the water, contributing money and allowing the water to come into a village, you're buying time for these kids, not just to go to school, but buying time for them to live long enough to hear the good news about living water.
Absolutely.
And if people would see that have that vision,
Well, I
get
know
on board with it.
Just going to the website and seeing some of the videos you have posted there, it's heartbreaking to start with, and it's depressing. It is depressing, but then you see the change that you're making. And that's why I say it's got to be gratifying to be able to make that much difference in human lives.
It is gratifying, and it's equally gratifying to see when it resonates with people next door, like here in Birmingham or anywhere that we have the privilege of traveling domestically. It's incredibly humbling because, Don, as you know, you have 1,000,001 options to give charity, give to charities. You know what I mean? It's like there's no shortage of opportunity to give charitable dollars to organizations that are, doing good work and need donations. So when people choose us, that's incredibly gratifying, because it's like we can take them then and literally we can take people on an airplane and bring them to the middle of nowhere, and they can stand in this village and meet the people that they, through their generosity, have changed the trajectory of these stories forever. And it's incredible. And I would just add to that I don't know if you knew this, but here's a quiz for you. Do you know, and you might know this, but Don, I don't know you very well, so I'll ask you this. Out of all Christian giving, what percentage of it, there's 3 billion people in the world that are considered unreached with the gospel, 3 billion, over 40% of the world's population. Out of Christian giving, what percentage goes to that population, what's considered unreached by the gospel?
I'm going to guess low. I want to say 10%.
Guessing low was right, but it's lower at 1%. 1% of all Christian giving goes towards advancing the gospel of Jesus amongst unreached places. 99% of all Christian giving, which is the rest, I'm not a math major, but that's 100%. Goes,
I'm the one that had my decimal point in the wrong place. Okay.
99% goes towards places that already are considered reached and have a lot of opportunity to hear the gospel.
I guarantee you ask most evangelicals, they'll tell you that practically everybody in the world has heard the message.
No. 3.2 billion still would,
a lot of folks
never have heard the name of Jesus. And so our whole goal, right, is that population. And for whatever reason, as God in his mysterious wisdom has ordained this, the 771 million people that still don't have clean water are in that 1040 window of people that have not heard the gospel. So this is like the most tangible way to be able to say, I'm going to meet a tangible physical need that you need anyway. And while I'm here, I want to share with you about the transformative power and the life-giving power of Jesus Christ.
And how many of those people, really, how many of those people say, who is this Jesus of whom you speak?
Yeah, I mean, they don't know. They don't know. Another story out of Chad in this village I was just in is when they heard that we were going to drill, they were so desperate for water. The chief and the women, the whole village basically, the night before when we had our rig park there, they went and they sacrificed chickens and goats, and they took the blood and they rubbed it all over our rig.
Oh, wow.
And prayed to Allah and to their ancestral gods, because they're animists as well. Mm-hmm. Just pleading for water. Our geologist, who'd been doing this for 30 years and never gets it wrong, told me, he goes, we were drilling, dry as a bone. He goes, I've never been that wrong in my life. The cook who was cooking for our team, our drilling team out there, went to our Africa programs director who was on site during the drill and said, hey, just so you know, the village people came out last night and made animal sacrifices, put blood on the rig because they're so desperate for water. Our Africa director tells our Pastor Musa in this case, who is a Muslim background believer, converted from Islam to Christianity, told him what had happened, and he gets his Bible, his Arabic Bible, and in Arabic starts circling the camp. I mean, this is like a real Elijah and the prophets of Baal story. Yeah. And he holds it in there and goes, to the only God, and Jesus, his only begotten Son. May these people, under the sound of my voice, forever know that there is no power in Allah to bring water out of the ground, and there is no power in their ancestral gods to bring water to them. But there is only power in the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth to bring water for them, because he loves them and wants them to know him. And then he said, move the rig 30 meters that way and drill again. They did it. They drilled, and I was just there last week. It's the highest yielding well we've ever had in the history of Never Thirst. And the people said, now we know that there's not power in the name of Allah. There's only power in the name of Jesus. So we will follow
wow.
Jesus.
That is a modern day Elijah story.
It was
There's
crazy.
no doubt.
There you go.
Yeah.
That gives you chills. That's
Yeah.
exciting. Yes.
How do people find out more about Never Thirst?
Well, all the usual channels.
Besides this fine podcast.
Of course, this is the ground zero to learn about who we are and where you can find us. But neverthirstwater.org is our website. That's where you're going to find most information. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all the usual places. I am not on any social media, so we have other people that take care of that for us. So I couldn't even tell you our handles right now, but we have Facebook and Instagram, and those are where most people find us.
I would start with a website. If I were just casually interested, I don't know how you'd be casually interested after hearing this story.
Right.
I would definitely start with a website and
Never,
take a look.
Never
Take a look
Thirst
at the videos.
Water. Neverthirstwater.org.
Neverthirstwater.org. Yep.
You know, I just as a side note, that whole story about the women in the circular latrine. Yeah. I was saying to my husband the other day, there was some sort of information I got from another woman that he had no clue about, and I was like, women are the original social media. They really are. And what you did was you disrupted their social media, their medieval social media.
We learned a hard lesson. On that one.
Yep. Everybody knows women are the communicators. The men never communicate unless it's about who's favored in the NCAA tournament.
There you go.
That's about it.
We talk about that, man.
You have your brackets filled out?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
They're probably busted already. We'll have two of them are busted already. Yes, on the play-in games. But we'll not talk about that. I learned so much from this podcast. I'm glad I watch it every week. This is really I'll never complain about only getting 3 bars on my cell phone again. I'll tell you that.
No, I'm every time I take a drink, it's going to feel like I'm drinking a pot of gold.
There you go.
When you realize it, it's more valuable.
Matt Letorneau, thank you so much for being with us today and for talking about the wonderful work that you're doing out there in places we didn't know existed.
Well, thanks for having me.
Against problems that most of us didn't know existed too. And hope you'll go learn more. Also hope if you enjoyed this podcast, you'll tell folks about it. You'll subscribe. You'll give us reviews and thumbs up and whatever it takes on YouTube, on Spotify, on iTunes. The 1819 News website is a good place to go start. Our Facebook page is there, and you can watch all the podcasts there as well. That's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining us on This Alabama Life.